People have a very strange picture in their heads of what doing well financially looks like. They imagine private jets, fancy watches, some giant house with too many rooms. Let me tell you something that will probably disappoint the part of you that likes Hollywood stories. Real financial strength, most of the time, looks boring from the outside. It hides in habits, not in headlines. It shows up in the way you sleep at night, in how you react to surprise bills, in whether you feel desperate when the market drops or your boss frowns at you. I remember, over many decades, watching people who looked rich. You know what separated them? It wasn't the car, or the clothes. It was whether their life could absorb a shock without falling apart. Somebody with a high income, a big mortgage, a pile of debt, and no savings may look successful at the office party. But one nasty surprise can push them over the edge. Meanwhile, someone with a modest lifestyle, money put away, no toxic debt, and some ownership of real assets might look ordinary. But they the ones who survive storms. Since you asked about signs you redoing well, let me talk through what those signs really are, from the point of view of an old man who has seen both sides. And let me do it in a conversational way, because this isn't some classroom checklist. It's about how your life actually feels day to day. First, you know what I would look at? I'd ask, can you take a punch? Not a physical punch. Life's financial punch. I'd ask, if a big bill landed in your lap tomorrow, would you be shattered, or would you be annoyed but calm? If when the car breaks down or the roof leaks, you don't go into a blind panic. That's a sign. That calm you feel when an unexpected expense shows up and you think, all right, it's not fun, but I can handle it. That's real wealth in disguise. It means you not funding your life with borrowed money every time something goes wrong. It means you built a buffer, maybe a few months of expenses, maybe more, so that one surprise doesn't throw you off your entire plan. I remember my own life having its share of ugly surprises. A sick child, a divorce, legal bills, none of that was theoretical. In those moments, the question was never, what's my net worth on paper? The question was, can I pay what needs to be paid without destroying my future? If you reached a point where life can throw something at you and you don't have to immediately turn to high interest debt or beg for mercy, you're doing better than you think. Another sign people overlook. You're not living on a knife edge between your income and your lifestyle. Let me tell you, if every time your paycheck arrives it's already fully spoken for, rent, payments, subscriptions, little treats, all lined up like soldiers, then you are not doing well, no matter how fancy those treats look. But if you earn, say, $70,000 and spend 40 or 50 instead of 69,000, you've created something most people never have. Margin, that gap between what you earn and what you spend, is the seedbed of everything good that can happen to you financially. I remember telling people that high income doesn't make you rich. Low expenses do. High income feels good. Low expenses work. If you quietly designed your life so that your needs are modest, and you don't have to keep upgrading every time your income rises, that's not failure. That's a huge underappreciated sign that you're on the right track. The people who upgrade their lifestyle with every raise never escape the treadmill. The people who keep their lifestyle flat and let savings rise, those are the ones who walk off the treadmill eventually. Let me ask you something. When you get a small raise, what happens? Does your rent rise, your car payment rise, your restaurant bill rise, all in perfect harmony? Or do you feel comfortable letting most of that new money flow into savings or investments without feeling deprived? If you can do the second thing, if you can increase your surplus instead of your show, that's a very strong sign you're doing well, even if your Instagram doesn't look exciting. Another sign that doesn't get talked about enough is your relationship with debt. I don't mean any debt at all. I mean bad debt. If you're not loaded up with high-interest consumer debt, if you're not rolling balances on credit cards at ridiculous rates each month, that alone places you ahead of a shocking percentage of the population. You might not feel rich. You might not have a huge portfolio yet, But the absence of those chains around your ankles is a kind of invisible wealth. I remember watching so many smart people ruin themselves not because they were stupid, but because they could not resist using debt to accelerate everything. They wanted to feel rich now, to have all the symbols at once. When somebody has little or no high interest debt, and they pay their bills on time, and lenders aren't constantly chasing them, that's a quiet signal of competence. It says, this person is not mortgaging their future to pay for today. Impulses. You know what else is a sign? You actually know what your money is doing. I don't mean you memorized every transaction. I mean you not hiding from your finances. You can sit down and look at your accounts without dread. You know roughly what you own, what you owe, what comes in, and what goes out. People who are doing badly often avoid this, like the plague. Their financial life is a dark closet they never open because they afraid of what they LLC. I remember saying that if you want to get what you want, you have to deserve what you want. Deserving in the financial sense often starts with facing reality. If you can calmly review your spending, your saving, your debts, your investments without spiraling into panic or denial, that's a big sign of health. It means your financial life is under enough control that you can look it in the eye. There's another sign that sounds soft but matters a great deal. Your level of financial anxiety. If every bill, every headline, every market move sends you into a swirl of fear, that's telling you something about your fragility. On the other hand, if you find that you not constantly thinking about money, not because you rich beyond all imagining, but because you set up sensible systems, automatic saving, automatic investing, modest fixed expenses, that's a sign you doing better than you feel. I remember people with huge fortunes who were always terrified. They fret about every fluctuation, every possible loss. And I've met people with far less money who walked around with more serenity than those so-called tycoons. The steadiness came from having built a base, some cash, some assets, manageable commitments, no need to impress anyone. If you can pay your bills, absorb a surprise, and still sleep reasonably well at night, that's a form of wealth. You know what might surprise you as a sign you doing well. You can say no to yourself. You don't buy everything you want. You don't chase every upgrade. You don't go into debt to match someone else. Vacation, when a shiny object appears, you can pause and ask, is this really worth trading a piece of my future for? The ability to say no without feeling like your life is ruined is a form of financial maturity that most people never develop. I remember watching people become slaves to their own desires. Every advertising slogan worked on them. Every comparison to a neighbor or coworker pushed them to spend. If you reached a point where you don't compare yourself as much anymore, where you can see someone else as fancy whatever and think, good for them, instead of, I am a failure, you in better shape than you realize. That's quiet wealth, the kind you feel in your nervous system, not the kind other people applaud. Having some investments, real productive assets you intend to hold, also matters a lot. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe you own a chunk of a broad stock index through a fund. Maybe you own shares in a few good companies you understand. Maybe you have some retirement accounts that are actually funded, not empty shells. If your money is no longer all trapped in bank accounts and consumption, but some of it is out there in the world working for you, you've crossed an important line. Now, let me tell you, if you're reinvesting and you're not jumping in and out with every gust of wind, if you can stay on a consistent path and not constantly switch strategies, that's another sign. People who are in worse shape tend to flail. They chase the hot thing this year, then abandon it for the next thing. If you've settled on a sensible approach and you calmly following it, adding money over time, that's the kind of behavior that tends to lead to real wealth. Even if it feels slow, one of the best signs you're doing well, even if it does feel like it, is that your financial future is moving from the realm of vague fear into concrete planning. If you're restarting to think seriously about retirement, about how you LL support yourself in your later years and you actually doing something about it, funding accounts, owning assets, maybe even talking to knowledgeable people. That's much better than drifting along and hoping it all works out. I remember people who woke up at 60 with no plan and no assets, and a long list of if only stories. That's a rough place to be. If you younger than that and you've already accepted that nobody's going to bail you out, that your savings and investments are your responsibility, and you reacting on that, then you ahead of many people who pretend the future will somehow sort itself out. You asked for a title and a theme wrapped around these ideas, something in my voice. So let me give you one. Call it, You Think You Failing with Money. But these quiet signs say you winning. And the theme is very simple. Real financial success is mostly invisible. It's not the car in the driveway. It's the absence of panic when life hits you. It's not the size of your salary. It's the size of the gap between what you earn and what you spend. It's not the number of things you own. It's the number of decisions you can make without asking for permission. Now, let me talk a bit about the future you're worried about. These years like 2025, 2026, and whatever comes after. People always want to know if some coming year is going to be especially horrible. Maybe we get more inflation. Maybe there be a recession. Maybe markets will fall. Maybe something will blow up that nobody has on their bingo card. History suggests you get all of that sooner or later. But here's the interesting part. The signs that you doing well financially. Don't suddenly change because the calendar does. If you have low or no toxic debt, if you live below your means, if you have some savings and some prudent investments, if you can handle a shock without going to pieces, those signs matter in every environment. In a stormy period, they matter even more. The people who are quietly doing those things now will look like geniuses in hindsight, not because they predicted anything, but because they behaved sensibly before trouble hit. I remember every crisis being followed by a wave of stories about lucky, people who had cash to deploy, who weren't wiped out, who bought assets when they were cheap. It wasn't luck in the way most people mean it. It was the cumulative result of habits, saving, restraint, boring consistency. If right now you the sort of person who spends less than you earn, who chips away at debt, who funds investments regularly, who does panic at every wobble. That's not nothing. That's the scaffolding of resilience. The danger is that you compare yourself to some fantasy. You say, I don't have millions. I'm not set for life. I still worry sometimes. And therefore you conclude you failing. That's the wrong benchmark. The right benchmark is, are you moving in the right direction? Is your net worth growing year by year? Is your debt shrinking or at least under control? Is your dependence on a single paycheck lowering as your savings and investments rise? Is your sense of panic about money decreasing over time? If the answers are yes, that's success in motion. So let me turn it around and ask you, do you have a bit of money saved that you didn't have 5 years ago? Are you less entangled in stupid debt than you were? Can you handle a surprise without collapsing? Are you no longer constantly comparing your life to everyone else? On social media. Do you own something? A business? A fund? A home? That didn't exist in your life a decade ago. If so, you might already be doing well financially, even if the world hasn't thrown you a parade. The world loves loud displays of wealth, and it mostly ignores the quiet signals of stability. But those quiet signals are the real story. If you have them, cherish them, strengthen them. They what will let you walk into whatever 2026 looks like with your head up, instead of your heart in your throat. And for an old man like me who has seen quite a few storms, that calmness, that ability to stay rational when everyone else is frantic, is the best sign of all that you truly doing well.